It
Hold
was
on. All right, we're live. So what are you two babbling on about that you wanted to talk about?
the gay gene, right?
Oh
So when
God.
I say it's
I
real,
wasn't aware that this was like a theory. Okay, I thought it was just
yeah,
like I've
it's
heard like little things about it like bounced around on the internet, but I didn't know that it was like an actual conversation. So fill me in.
right. Like it's a myth and a misnomer, right? Because when they say the gay gene, they don't literally mean the gay gene. They just mean that homosexual was hereditary. That was the assertion they're trying to make. That proved to be false too, apparently, or still under heavy scrutiny, mainly because science can't support it.
We
Science isn't able to find the quote unquote gay gene. And no, when you notice that one of the letters delegated to a part of our DNA is G, don't assume that means gay. That's not
I'm
it.
I'm about to drop some shit on you both because
we're
y'all have zero understanding of humanitarian like study sciences.
I'm
I know
scared.
that that was very well worded. I am a poet. Um, I go I go live at my local poetry shop every Monday.
Bars.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
Almost all human behavior, including being gay, is decided by genes, but it's also decided on two other factors, which include your psychological health and
And
include
coming to
social
listen to the
and
Fireplace. This
include
is
your.
episode 7, I believe. We're gonna talk
It is
about
episode 7, The Boy Who Cried Russia. But I need.
Fat.
But it literally the model is called the biopsychosocial model, and it is the new
I
scientific theory that is used to explain most human behavior.
don't care
Well,
anymore.
fine then.
Hey,
Fine then.
Jayford.
You're the one who wanted to talk about the
Jay,
gay gene instead of what we
sit
were
your
going
butt
to talk
down and
about.
listen to
Listen,
the teacher while the
want to
teacher
talk
is
about
talking.
I didn't want to talk about the gay gene. He brought
Oh
it up,
no,
and I
you're
was like,
right.
"What?"
You're
I was like,
right.
"What?" And
Blonde
then
hair, blue eyes wanted to
I
talk about
kept
the gay
going,
gene.
"What?" And then I was like, "Okay, well, maybe if we go live, this conversation will peter out faster." And
Really?
Oh,
I was
Come
wrong.
on, fine, whatever. Let's just sputter out. Frederick is correct. There's more than one factor involved here. Okay, so anyway, hey guys, welcome to the fireplace. We have a long list, mainly thanks to Malcolm here, but
Josh and I both fucked up because we could only think of the Mueller report.
well, I mean, it's big news. You know, what I mean, it's
Did I literally bring up all the other stuff? Because the other stuff is kind of related to it, but also like it's things.
I mean, you pretty
Like,
much brought up everything else. The only thing Josh and I could come up with was the Mueller report.
look. I make this solemn promise. Next week, I'm picking most of the topics. Freaking Trigger Weasel did last week.
boy.
Alchem's doing this week.
I
It's only
pick
right.
all of them all the time except for this week.
Yeah, I mean, look, Trigger, a couple of them were more 50-50 between you
I
and
mean, this is true, but I'm like the one who like scours the fucking internet looking for news
yeah,
to fucking get up in arms about.
Am I
homie.
literally? Have you forgotten about the fact that like I bring stuff to you?
I
And
mean,
like
yeah, this is also true.
I'm just gonna put that out there. You know.
Hey guys, you know what we got to put out there? The news that we intend to put out there. So, what do
Starting
you?
with apparently Twitter shadow banning.
Ooh.
I believe this paired with a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. Let's see. So shocked to hear this. Eye roll face. It's been going on for far too long, and the time has come to end this flagrant one-way discrimination against good, hardworking, God-fearing Americans. Enough is enough. Some very hard-pressing words from Donald Trump Jr. Twitter engineers were
Well,
caught
you
on
know how it
tape
is.
talking about shadow banning, a way of talking, targeting conservatives. Oh, this isn't news, but yeah, this is kind of important. We finally have they finally admitted it. Not on purpose, but they finally admitted it. This is something we've known for a long time that they do, especially after what happened with Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah. Well, my thing is,
Ah, crap,
um,
that one again.
Look,
it's kind of hard
2015
too.
was a great year
Hello.
because of Milo.
Am I muted? Oh no,
No,
I'm
you're
not.
not muted.
You're just ignoring me. Okay. So anyway, um, like at the end, I think of 2018, 2017, I'm not sure which. There's this huge, discussion where Google went through, the ringer basically for, figuring out like how they operate, and like they're operating as a corporate business, obviously, but there was this big situation where they had to go to like courts and like go to all these different, lengths to provide this information to all these questions being asked, and it was just crazy because they had to go into like if they were changing search results up, like just all this other stuff, but it's like it's also a business, so everything that they were doing, like whether it was holding on to information and not like mentioning it explicitly, if it was like in a separate thing, or if it was them working with China, whether it was them doing all this stuff to, you know, deface certain types of people and have all these different types of information out that like wasn't actually representative of like specifically people when it came to search results, It's just like I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy to me.
I mean, it is crazy, and I think this ties back into a conversation we had a few weeks ago of whether or not, and this was actually when Jack Dorsey came on to the Joe Rogan show, when we talked
Yeah.
about whether or not social media should censor people. Um, because I mean, Twitter is shadow banning people, which basically for context, shadow banning is not like regular banning. They don't straight up ban you from their platform. I was being a little dishonest when I led with Milo Yiannopoulos because they straight out banned him.
Well, it's not
Shadow
that either.
banning is
Like
when you just don't show up in anyone's feeds.
yeah, so they'll when they were talking to the journalist, the Twitter representative that the journalist was talking to, affirmed, the fact that there are kind of like underlying guidelines that only the Twitter moderators and everything um, are in any position of power to like actually impose on people, and he was talking about this
Well,
has conservative content, this has pro Trump content. I'm not going to let that through.
yeah.
And then they'll let other stuff go, basically unchecked, like essentially unchecked. Like he worded it to where it was like pretty, but it was essentially all left
Depersoning.
type content is unchecked. And there's a ton of other stuff that's going on Twitter too, and all the resources are on political stuff, which like is really freaking weird to me.
It is weird. But I mean, it's not something new because,
Oh
like I
yeah.
said, Twitter's been doing this for a while. Facebook has started doing this because, like, I've noticed a lot more random news stories that show up on my feed are heavily like liberal biased.
Yeah.
And actually, believe it or not, YouTube has been doing this for a while, where anything deemed conservative by YouTube doesn't show up in suggestion feeds, even in suggestion feeds under videos that are themselves conservative in nature.
Yeah, like all these, like I'll literally be having, you know, just a field day, like seeing a bunch of stupid like BuzzFeed stuff pop up on my suggestions when I don't subscribe to BuzzFeed. Like I
Mm-hmm.
moved off from them a while ago. If anything, I'll watch independent creators that came from BuzzFeed, like the Try Guys or, Sophia Nygard. I don't know how to say her name.
But I think the big thing, because we already had a big discussion on whether or not they should be able to do this.
Yeah, it's
But
like
I
if I,
think
if
that's
I
really the
subscribe for
question here.
content and you're gonna use like your corporate status to like bend the rules and make everything political or apolitical or whatever, it's like it's affecting my content. A and B, it's affecting the some sort of guidelines that everybody on YouTube and on these content creation, content sharing sites, social media sites, there's got to be some kind of intellectual boundary of like
I mean,
where you're allowed to share your information, how you're allowed to
yeah,
record it
I
and
would say
everything.
we should all just I would normally be inclined to say we should all just go to a social media website that allows us to post and view whatever we want
Yeah,
without
it's like everything.
editing algorithms at all. But Gab got shut down.
Huh?
Gab got shut down.
Gab?
Have you never heard of Gab?
I feel like I've heard of it before. I'm not sure like what it is. I wasn't on it.
There was like a social media website that I used for like a while called Gab. And it ended up becoming like this hub of toxic people because all of the right wing people who were getting kicked off of Twitter and Facebook were going to Gab.
Uh,
But at the same time, it was also the social media website that's mission was not to interfere with anything. And what ended up happening is one of the mass shooters, I want to say last year, posted this whole big thing on Gab. And basically, what happened is the banks came after them and refused to fund them. And
oh,
in addition to that, the government came after them, which I think is hilarious when you take it in consideration with what happened last week. Because, like, the New Zealand shooter's entire manifesto and everything, and he even live streamed his shooting last week live on Facebook, and they're
yeah,
still here.
yeah.
But
That's the
Shooter makes
craziest shit.
an edgy post on Gab, and the entire social media website gets shut down because they're anti-establishment.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like if you have a site like that, it's gonna be really hard to keep them afloat if they're not completely independent. And if you are, whether you're a site, whether you're a business person or whatever, do your damn best to be completely independent. Get your money from people who have explicitly like loaned it to you, or people who explicitly just want to support
Well,
you
the
or
thing
whatever.
is that it's a social media website, which means that it has to get all of its funding, through the banks because money travels through them. I pay you online, right? When I make a payment to you online, that money goes through the banks. And what literally happened is the banks, all of them, started refusing to do business with Gab.
That's what I'm saying.
The
You
same
got to
thing
do it. You
happened
got to
with
do it completely
Subscribestar.
direct.
The same thing happened with Subscribestar, which was the Patreon alternative that popped up as soon as people realized that Patreon was refusing to do business
Oh,
with
it
conservatives.
sucks. This
Yeah.
sucks so bad. This is so bad.
What's funny is if you want to talk about, Josh will totally. Oh, if people want to talk about the possibility of living in like a 1984 dystopian future, we're already here.
Yeah, like I honestly have been seeing this coming. Like we were in, I forgot what class it was, but we were gonna start reading, and I'd already read it, and we started going back through it, and I was like, this shit is already happening. Like what? Like we have TVs as big as walls now. We have wireless earbuds. We
Mm-hmm.
have TV where it's all just like, not even just TV, like YouTube and everything, where it's all just like everybody being a character and having a mask over their face. Like everybody wears makeup. Everybody does something to like hide their true selves. And it's like we are being watched. We are being moderated by people who are in big technology, and they predicted it. And it's like I don't I don't understand why people aren't like more aware of this. Like it was like a prophecy kind of like literature, art. It's all really deeply connected to our inner workings, and it's able to tell a lot of truth, even if it is completely abstract and parallel to our conception of reality. And it's
Yeah.
like if you look at this shit, it's literally happening around us, and like you can't not notice it. Like I'm pretty sure, like there's somebody always looking through my camera or whatever, like, oh, what's he doing, and getting fucking annoyed by how many selfies I take for no goddamn reason. But it's like
Nobody's looking through my screen because I have a post-it note over my camera.
I don't have the patience. I don't have the patience, and I don't. I really don't care. Like I feel like everybody should get theirs, and like if they want to watch me and see what they want to see, or if they don't want to watch me and don't give a fuck, then they ain't gonna affect me. And if they do affect me, then that's what it is. And it's just like either way, it's gonna happen. And either way, people these days like need to accept like pick your poison. Like, are you gonna be part of the people who are like aware and like does little things every day to protect themselves against it, or are you gonna be somebody who like looks at the signs and you're just like, this shit's fucking crazy? And it's like either way, it's gonna be like that because that's just how humans are. But like up until now, we haven't had something like this. We haven't had something this big that the government had like no say in. Especially now with the
I
fact that
mean,
we've gotten even
I
more.
mean, the government does have kind of a say because what I find most interesting about all of the social media websites is a lot of them get quite a bit of money from the US government, like directly.
What?
Yeah, like Facebook and Twitter apparently get millions from the government each year to continue running.
That's confusing.
It is. And I think that's kind of the main reason I feel that Facebook and Twitter should be obliged to operate under the First Amendment, where unless somebody's posting something that's straight up illegal, they should have to. They should have
Yeah,
to.
that's fucking weird because like that's the usual like
Yeah,
if something is funded by the government, hello.
it's kind of the same thing with like, because Trump recently put out a law saying that. I mean, it remains to be seen whether or not he's going to enforce it, and it's less of a law and more of a statement because it was already a law. He simply stated that he was going to enforce the law that people in schools, so colleges receiving government funding, had to allow all free speech
Yeah,
and allow speakers and protect speakers from both sides of the aisle.
yeah.
And it's crazy that that's not happening for social media, which actually, like I said, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, is why I think Andrew Yang is probably going to do really well this upcoming election because
Yeah.
he's the only candidate talking about this.
I really hope that like if he does get elected,
Like,
or even if he doesn't, like I personally like again, like I don't care who's in the office just because like they're basically just like a figurehead.
yeah, I mean the
And
president does nothing.
yeah,
He
they
just
like basically just veto shit and propose shit, and if people don't like it, then they don't do anything. Like they
the
don't have
Senate's
any
the
real.
ones who make the real decisions, right, Josh?
Right.
I'm sure
What?
Josh can. I'm sure Josh can give us a schooling on who has the power in government and why. Given how much better
Yeah. Well,
government.
and I come in with this angle here, which it's kind of funny, honestly. If I literally just say nothing and sit back, you guys will just go.
We do go. You need to stop us. We're animals.
Freaking out! I mean, it's all productive. It's all beautiful, right? Why not just observe? But still, I feel as though there's three levels of power. You have the figurehead, level one. Level two is operational, and level three is the decision maker. The level one being the figurehead is of course the president. The level two being the operational is Congress and legislators and things like that. But level three, who is actually the decision maker, the head of the head, are the world's richest and most lucrative businessmen, the
And
1%.
NASA, nigga, hello.
Josh, are you
Congress and
about to
shit.
go all 1% on us?
I'm saying, you see, the key corruptor of government within my theoretical analyses is money. And because money talks, whoever has most of it, even if behind the scenes, will talk most. And who do you think has most of it? Who do you think will have vested interests in everything around them? The same people that sees opportunity and advantage in all things.
Black
I mean,
people.
you're not wrong.
And I feel as though legislators are guided around by the nose and by the ass, mind you, with money.
explains why
And
everybody thinks Putin is Trump's sugar daddy or whatever.
uh-huh. Which by the way is a perfect time to segue into you know what.
What?
Oh, you want to segue into that story now?
Yes, let us
All
begin.
right. All right. So skipping around the planned list a little, the Mueller report
Happening.
came out.
Oh,
Hey
The Mueller
guys.
I
report
got
is
shit to add
finished.
to that too. Hey,
So Josh is about to get fired up about this.
Oh yeah, this was my big topic. It may have been only one topic that all three of us, remembered to mention, but I'm just gonna claim it as my own because honestly, I would have nothing else otherwise. So
Oof.
okay, talk to me.
so first a background. This Mueller report has been going on for many, many, many months, and we don't
Years.
even years if you really think about its beginnings. Like it's
Are we at like 5 years
but
now of people like trying to dig up some dirt on Trump or whatever?
I
right,
mean,
but the report didn't actually take rise until a bit after the candidacy was complete.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like we've been talking about this stuff and trying to find documentation and everything. It's like that. It's the same thing like with that dude who was like, if anybody can have a video or an audio recording or anything sent in, of me saying this or whatever the case was, like he would pay them or something, and nobody brought it in. And it's like
I mean,
Now,
yeah,
we've been trying to get this report going, and we've had it going for now officially for how long?
I would
I
say
don't.
3 years, give or
Three
take.
years. 3 years. So we've had about half a decade to get
Like,
information out
How
and
long
about.
do you think a decade is?
a decade
10
is
years. Hello.
3 years is not half a decade.
I'm saying five because now
Oh,
we're 2020, right? And all this stuff started happening with Trump and everything, like all the drama around 2015, 2016. So give or
yeah,
take
but
five.
the actual accusation of him being involved with Russia didn't actually take hold until after he won the presidency.
right.
Were people already talking
2016.
about it before though?
Yeah,
I
fall
mean,
of
they were talking
2016.
about
Now
it, but
we're in
it,
spring of 2019. So
that
give
would
or
be like
take
the
two and a
roots.
half, 3 years.
Okay.
But I mean,
Well, either way, it's an exaggeration.
yeah,
Like, and the core point of what I'm saying is we've had a fat ass minute to get this going, and nothing has come of it. And it's crazy that right just now, you know, in time, we finally, you know, can come to a slight agreement that like he didn't find anything. It's like
Yeah.
what?
what I think is actually crazy is Josh. Do you remember last year in You Know Who's class on You Know What? When every time he started talking about Trump, he would bring up Russia and Mueller as if it was an absolute certainty that Trump colluded with Russia, and that was taught to us high school seniors as like the gospel.
Right. And now this comes out, and it is beautiful. And it is
Speaking of
beautiful
which,
for
I wonder
one
how
simple fact.
devastated he
You're
is.
beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful for one simple fact. Everyone put their faith in Mueller. And because they put their faith in Mueller, they have to therefore put faith in his decision here. And his decision was null. His decision was Trump did not have collaboration. He did not have any sort of dastardly hijink in the works in order to win the presidency with Russia. No, he is not doing some favors
Yeah,
to at night. He's not doing any of that. Nor is the obstruction of justice going to go through either. That was actually a side topic, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit. But for better or for worse, the Mueller report was a negative. There was nothing on Trump in the end, or as was specifically quoted, insubstantial evidence. So they
yeah,
couldn't indict. They couldn't do anything of that nature. And it's wonderful because it does vindicate Trump. It does just go to show that he has been released of this tiresome, pressurized like notion that Mueller's going to catch him. You're going to be caught, you crook. Everyone's going to find out that it was a hoax. That you winning was not to be.
I
And
mean, it
guess
was a
what?
hoax. The whole Russian scandal was a hoax.
Yeah, the scandal was a hoax, not him winning being a hoax. And now all the freaking liberals who place their hopes, and I'm looking to liberals for the most part, although of course anyone within the spectrum can look to it, but particularly liberals, they have to understand that this guy that they so trust his opinion. He literally found no evidence, so they just have to take the L here. And I'm not going to attack liberals when I say this,
But
but they need to start realizing that they get too emotionally vested in these things. They were so ready to jump on the first glim of light of getting Trump out without even understanding that he is in fact valid, that someone like him could exist. And this just vindicates him. But as a side note, they wanted to bring up a secondary notion of obstruction of justice. Do you guys remember what that was based on?
I don't even know.
him firing the previous head of CIA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The
James
thing,
Comey. And they considered him firing James Comey to be obstruction of justice in order to hide him from his tracks. Turns out that turned negative too. It was not considered obstruction of justice. It couldn't go to the Supreme Court, anything.
Well,
So
the thing about Comey is like I know like that situation was just fucking crazy because like he when he testified he said that like Trump wasn't being wiretapped and everything, but like back in the day, not back in the day, but like previously he had bragged about you know intentionally going beyond his means uh when it came to White House practices in order to try and set up General Flynn. So this shit, it's not just about Trump either. General Flynn like supported Trump, and he tried to do that shit, and then he also lied about when he was examining Hillary's emails. Because Weiler's laptop, got to them or whatever. And I don't even know how to say his name. Some dude was in charge of it though, and those niggas only looked at 3,000 emails when it came to like the 700K that was on the laptop. And then after that, he also lied after about after interviewing Hillary Clinton that the decision was made to not recommend charges, but that decision already happened before she was interviewed. And then on top of all of that, it leads right back into the actual Russia collusion bullshit because Hillary during the Uranium One thing got $150 million. Bill Clinton got 500K, and Trump got nothing. So this shit is just so like convoluted. It's fucking crazy. Like I don't understand how people can actually look at the situation and be on that side. And yeah, I get that being a liberal, being a leftist in specific, not just being a liberal, because there are plenty of good like liberal people out there. But it's like y'all really need to like open your fucking eyes because this shit's getting weird. Like it really is.
yeah. Now, good note by Alcom there. Before I, continue with it, Trigger Weasel, what is your take on this so far?
I mean, I just think it's crazy that all these people have been putting so much faith into something that turned out to be false.
Repeatedly false, mind
And
you.
what's even repeatedly false, and what I think is crazy, is I was actually on Facebook today, and there were some liberals who were sitting there like, and obviously this isn't exactly what they said, but they were sitting here like, we were partially humiliated, but we want to be completely humiliated. Because these people were sitting there going, we need the full Mueller report. Because the Democratic Party is refusing to put out, like the Senate is refusing to vote to let Mueller release the full thing, the full report. And it's mostly Democrats and liberals that are saying no.
It's like, why do you think? Why would you?
Which to me is
that you're
going
supposed
so,
to like saving grace?
yeah.
And everybody who's supposed to be backing him wants to not release it. It's because you ain't go
It's
find
because
shit and
he
you look at it.
accidentally dug up dirt on them, obviously. I mean, okay, There's actually a secondary option. That's like one of two options that I see. The first option, like I just said, is the one I think is more likely, which is that Mueller dug up dirt on them
Oh,
and
that's
they're
true. That's true.
terrified.
That's fucking true.
The
Yeah.
second possibility, which would be less amusing to me, but could also very well be true, is that technically, until Mueller releases his official statement to the public, it's still an ongoing investigation. And they can technically leverage that against Trump by saying there's an ongoing investigation on him.
Mm. Yeah,
Well, my
true.
thing
Yeah.
is with Mueller and like all these investigation shit. Like back when this stuff happened with Hillary and everything, going back to what I was bringing up, uh, the FBI chose not to look at it. So it very well could have been directly related to that. And it's crazy how close they're willing to step, to try and get some foot room on Trump. Because if they slip up and they go into this topic, it's really, really likely that they're going to have some explicit information on not only the money stuff that had to do with Hillary, but, because Hillary is Hillary and all this other shit's connected to her, like the scandals with the children and all that. I don't need to get into that right now, but you know what I'm talking about. Uh, there's a lot of stuff that they could be trying to avoid with this conversation, and it like you said, it's really smart of them, given who they are, in their position, quote unquote smart, you know, to keep this stance on it, and be able to continue this to say that it's an ongoing investigation. Because other than that, they really don't have shit. Like no, like even the arbitrary stuff, like him getting like golden showers and shit from like Russian people, like
Which, by the way, who fucking cares?
exactly. That's literally what I'm saying. Like that's it's arbitrary as fuck. Like we all have sex. Like we're all gonna do some crazy shit with sex, especially if we're fucking rolling in money. This nigga came out of bankruptcy 3 different times and signed off his most successful shit to his son, and he's president now. Like he's like a G. Like you can't deny. He's gonna do some weird shit. And like, A, nobody could prove that anyway. And B, who fucking cares? Again, who cares? Like why? Like why is that an element of the conversation?
Mm. Yeah. This entire report, right? This entire report seems to be coming at it from three angles. And when I mean three angles, I mean three parties are the primary effect here. One is the free radicals. The second is the system, and the third is the public.
Yup.
Now, and so from this triple angle, idea here, we to understand this, like why it seems so fishy, is to understand that the true nature of who's playing for the power struggle here. And the way I perceive it currently is Mueller and Trump represent what you would consider the free radicals. The system, for better or for worse, is dominated by liberal thought process. And this isn't to say that liberal thought processes are right or wrong. It's just the proclivity that society has, geared towards. And speaking of society, the public is in turn siding with the system. We have indoctrinated this way of thinking.
Yeah.
However, Trump is opposing both the public and the system because Trump is outside this political spectrum for the most part as far as politicians go. He is not versed in it, but also he's not shamed by it. However, as a sort of a dual combat here, he is also very much not abiding by what the public would like. The public finds a lot of his choices to be ignorant and atrocious. They will just simply, objectify Trump and try to think the worst of him. And admittedly, he does have his weak points that make it, fairly easy to do so. But in spite of all that, Trump is still very valid as a president, but we try to disvalidate him. So in a sense, it's a two-in-one. However, the key factor here is now Mueller. Just like with James Comey, these FBI directors, they are neutral. They are incredibly neutral. I mean, the only thing that could possibly be more neutral than these guys, no, in fact, they're even more neutral than the Supreme Court. And we know what the Supreme Court is like. Holy crap. I mean, those dudes may have been ushered in from one of the two parties, but they are no longer appertaining to a party, mind you.
Yeah,
But
when you become part of the Supreme Court, you know,
you
regardless as the
transcend
party, you're
party
going
in
to
a
decide
sense.
stuff with logic. You know, like that's how you got there. You're gonna be, thankfully, you know, that's kind of one of the main, you know, pros of our government system that I enjoy is the fact that, you know, the type of intellectual that you know us ourselves strive to be when it comes to being neutral and being intellectual and being reasonable. Those are the kinds of people that are in the Supreme Court, you know, most of the time, and
Right.
I'm thankful for that, personally.
Right. So within this power struggle here, you have the charged elements, and then you have the neutral elements, which acts as sort of arbiters, if you will. And that would be the FBI director and the Supreme Court. And in both the Supreme Court and the FBI director, whereas Mueller was going for both the primary notion of, collision with Russia and the secondary notion of obstruction of justice, and the Supreme Court with just the latter topic, they have voted they have said no. It has simply been insubstantial evidence. And they try to say that's ongoing, but much of the wording here would actually imply that they just simply don't have enough. And given that these were topics that have gone on for some years now, they aren't going to dig up dirt. It's not reasonable. People are trying to nitpick at words when, the spirit of the notion here is that the investigation is over. Trump cannot be evicted of anything. Now, because of this, we're starting to see a sort of an unlikely scenario here. Society was geared towards the notion that Trump was, in fact, being indicted. It's only a matter of time. However, just like with Trump being elected in general, we're in this tangential sort of reality where he does actually, manage to pull through. And we're suffering all that backlash. But I would beseech people to understand that what happened here is actually not a power play. What happened here is the inverse. This is the balancing of power plays. This is, if
Definitely.
you want to be real here, as Alcom, somewhat alluded to, the beauty of, American government. We have so many intricate forces at play that now we have some higher powers here, relatively speaking, that act as arbiters and, bring sense to it. There is a struggle going one way or another, and they would want to go one way or another. Therefore, you need a neutral element to decide where the balance is at, where the reality is at, more or less. That would be the director of the Supreme Court. They have said their piece, and it is only logical that we fall in line with that piece because they too have, thrown in the due logic for it. It does not mean and it does not mean, just, shut up and go with it. But anyone who examines this for a moment realize that this entire report and investigation was actually tossed in by society and perhaps the system. This wasn't something that would have normally popped up otherwise. The obstruction of justice, perhaps, but the obstruction of justice is actually, well, the supposed obstruction of justice was actually directly correlated to the primary initiative here. And what I mean to say, I know I have a tendency to mumble on and, just go from tangent to tangent, ergo, but what I
No,
mean to put
dude,
it
dude, definitely. Like I'm totally following your logic here because,
right.
when you mention the neutral element, you do have to admit that it is so neutral when it comes to the you know, Supreme Court and all that. Um, that it's almost a neutralizing element. And so when you look at it and you are that person, who has to sit down, you know, be in that position of, you know, being responsible for legitimately looking at a case and, you know, seeing how the energy flows from one topic to another, and deciding like how, you know, those claims are substantiated, then you're part of that decision of, you know, implicitly, um, looking at the situation, um, from a neutral perspective. You kind of have that, you know, in your nature when you're part of that collective larger system of you know, emphasize logical reasoning.
Right, right. And because that we have not have to per se, but it would be wise to just simply understand what is charged versus what isn't charged. And as most people who now this is going to seem like a bit of a big statement on my part, but anyone who is reasonable is almost certainly going to choose the neutral element by way of their logic input into this. They aren't bound to the whims of subjectivity, and that's my general piece here. I'm not going to side with Trump, and although as much as I personally would, we have to
Side
be we
Trump.
Oh my god.
right.
You're in the
Yeah.
dark side.
Oh god.
Well, Trigger Weasel made his reappearance here in a most frightening way. But speaking of
Kill the
our good,
child.
yeah, of our good dear friend, both me and Alchemist said our piece, concluded that it isn't even so much about Trump being right or wrong. It's about understanding what the powers that be and the neutral element has to say. Taking that as canon for just its logical base.
And then if we can continue talking somewhat in the vein of this, how about the fact that it was recently discovered by the New York Times um, that Hillary Clinton got a whole bunch of cash from Russia by selling them uranium.
Oh, this. This is
You want
some.
to talk about people who are funded by Russia?
This is
Yeah,
some
exactly.
disgusting,
Again, it all
delicious
ties together.
news.
Lady. Okay,
Okay,
I'll stop with that voice now.
yeah, you're pressing it a bit, honestly. Once and thrice is like enough, honestly. Like once you go four or more, it's over. It's overdoing it. So, anyway, yeah,
You
Green.
can say what you want about it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna remain neutral on that specific sentiment.
So Trigger, you engendered this particular topic. So, do you want to start off with your views on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, knowing
Who
my
said gender?
political bent, I think that it's absolutely stupid that people are willing to continue chasing after this, because now that we know that Trump wasn't the one who was receiving funding from Russia, I mean, there's all these people who talked about how they only preferred Hillary because of all the scandals that Trump was under. Well, now we've found out that not only is Trump innocent, but she's the one who was doing everything he was accused of.
Well,
And I don't
theoretically.
want to make any like big leaps, but I think that the fact that we found this out about Hillary Clinton, who is supposed to be the golden girl of the Democratic Party, I
Girl.
think that that says a lot. Like she was the golden girl for the Democratic Party, and she turns out to have been involved, like dipping her fingers in all of these pies, including
Mm.
selling uranium to Russia. Which, by the way, when the nukes drop on us from Russia, they will have been supplied by America. Thank you, Hillary Clinton.
By America, for America.
To
I mean,
America.
when you put it that way, I'm all for it. Let's bring on the war of the end times, boys.
Yeah, but let's maintain our composure here, ladies and gentlemen. No war, no thermonuclear war, if it can be helped. Right,
But
guys?
nuclear war
Right.
is fun.
It's only fun for the 13 seconds it takes when missile strikes to land, honey.
Fine.
Delay gratification.
So
Yeah.
Alchemist.
Anyway. Oh. Yeah. I just wanted to bring up real quick. I feel as though this whole uranium deal and whatnot, it comes up, but I feel like we need, idea of the uses and qualities of uranium because they could quite easily mention that the uranium is used for something else. We could go on and say, conjecture about whether or not this is actually Hillary making a power play, and where we thought Trump was doing said power plays, which is actually kind of wrong considering that we thought that Hillary and Russia didn't have a good relationship. At least that was the notion I was under. But I would say that, like Malcolm, I'm going to go neutral on this because there's just to quote the Mueller report, I'm going to use this terminology again. There was insufficient evidence to say one way or another.
This is true. Now,
Okay.
again, continuing to talk about Trump, because apparently he's all that we talk about now. I know that Malcolm is probably going to have some heavy words about. I know that Malcolm probably has some heavy words about Brit Hume, the CNN commentator who called out his network on how badly they were slandering Charlottesville.
Oh my god, that honestly, like, I could just like go off, to be honest, because
Do it.
It genuinely just like irks me. Like, it's messed up how he can come from like a seriously genuine place. Like, we all know, like, he's an abrasive dude. He's an abrasive dude, and the way he goes about stuff, be making it seem like he's a bad guy. But he was talking about the stuff, and he was just talking about it. Like he was talking to the reporter or the journalist or whatever about the stuff. Like he was talking to just another person, and he was like, there were some bad people on this side. There were some bad people on that side. Da 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 da. And the dude was like, well, you sound like you're. What the hell did he say? I'm like paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what they said, but he kind of said something like, well, you're kind of letting the people slide, like white supremacists and nationalists and stuff.
Well, because the accusation against Trump is that he called neo-Nazis fine people, which, by the way, he didn't.
Which was
and by the way,
out of context. Like,
Steve Cortez, who apparently works for CNN, wrote in a whole article about how he has proof. And it's not even like intense proof that you had to, like, to those of us who pay attention, or those of us who are like center left towards right, like anyone further right than center left was already well fucking aware that Trump didn't go out and say that neo-Nazis are just dandy fine people and they're so great. This is like actual news, though, to everyone who is left of that.
Yeah.
And even though the rest of us knew, because we actually watched Trump go out and talk, and we watched the whole video, that Trump wasn't saying that, I find it absolutely incredible that this is news to people.
Yeah, it's not even news. It's just like, this is finally coming out. And I'm just like, what?
Like, I mean, I don't want to... Part of me doesn't want to bring up the Clintons, but it's like the perfect example to me. When Bill Clinton was running, everyone thought that... all the other news networks thought that the right-wing networks were crazy because they were talking about how Bill Clinton clearly had some sort of messed up relationship with his wife. And later it came out that he was cheating on his wife. And oddly enough, when that came out and when Bill Clinton admitted to it, suddenly the left-wing news networks dug up an old interview and said, hey, look, he said that he and his wife were going through rough patches and it was being difficult to sort it out right here in the interview. And he even alludes to other women.
Snap.
And those of us who were paying attention were sitting there like, no shit.
Bruh, I'm dead.
Like, this isn't something that's new. This has happened before. And given the fact that it keeps happening, I think it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the tough part about being people like us who pay attention to this, is we get to be driven to insanity when we try to point out the truth to people. And then when the truth finally comes out, they sit there and go, oh, hey, look, it was out in the air, out in the open all along.
Like, no shit, Sherlock.
Like, we were telling you. We told you. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
It's
The stuff that
infuriating.
people pretend not to notice.
Yeah,
It's not even pretending not to notice at this point. These people are just fucking choosing to be blind. And it's like, they literally don't see it, It's not just like them, playing blind. It's like, it's them literally not seeing this shit.
I know. And by the way, Steve, I apologize because I know the fact that you wrote this means that you're losing your cushy job at CNN. But thank you.
damn,
We
cushy job.
appreciate you.
He's a G.
Even if the people who you work for call you horrible names, we appreciate you for letting us know that there's still some sanity left in the mainstream journalistic world.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, there's still heart, and that's a good thing. Oh, you gotta admit, being CNN isn't as much of a cushy job as say a judge.
Uh,
Yeah, anything that's still relying on the whims of subjectivity and just the whims of society is temporary. Like cushion jobs, for like a judge where no one's gonna make you quit being a judge. That's a cushion job. Think of Judge Judy.
I petition that we fire Judge Judy.
And why the
Anyway,
hell?
Jayford, let's bring up a dead horse
Hello.
and talk about Jesse Smollett again.
Since
This
that's
dude.
now.
Because he wanted to talk about the former Obama chief of staff making contact with him.
Yeah, it was, again, like, people want to be bringing up a bunch of shit about whoever, and it's like, it's always getting connected back to the people who were supposedly, these amazing, like, trailblazers on the other side. Like Michelle Obama was like supposedly the best first lady doing her thing, and Obama was the best president, and so was the best this, and like their previous chief of staff or whatever, or whatever. I
I'm
don't
sorry,
even.
what the fuck is Josh doing?
I don't know. He's probably breathing.
What do you mean?
It sounds like you're walking and breathing heavily, like, bruh.
Oh, you
Street.
can hear that? Oh crap! Hey guys, I'm doing my core regiment while I'm listening to you guys.
There's this thing called a mute button.
A mute button? No, because at any time I could be called to freaking I could be called to arms and state my opinion. I mean, come on, guys.
You
It's
can
not that bad, is
unmute
it?
yourself, you daft
That's the
fool.
beauty. That's the beauty of the mute button. It works both ways.
Man, homie, oh come on. Fine, all
Call me
right, all
homie.
right. I will do you this favor.
Blonde hair, blue eyes did just call you homie.
Boy, that is the whitest
Boy.
shit I've heard in a while.
As a Jew calling you homie.
As a come on, guys, don't be like that. All right, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay.
Anyway, what were you saying, Alcom?
Don't ask me. I was about to ask you.
You were talking about trailblazers and how the Obamas were like supposedly the best in their field.
Oh yeah, they're doing their thing right, and everybody's talking about how, perfect and shit that they are, and they're always getting connected somehow, one way or another, to the craziest shit. And back in the day, and it's like, there's this scandal where, the Weinstein thing. His daughter had just started working for the Weinstein Company, or Michelle's daughter, since she was the one who was mentioned in the initial NBC article thing, not mentioned, but how she was connected.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Chicago police people want a federal probe in the Jussie Smollett case, and and the Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, interfered in the police investigation after she was contacted by the Obama's former chief of staff. So that's I don't know. That's just some food for thought.
I mean, yeah, it is, but I think I think that the fact that people are still treating Jesse Smollett as if he's
As if he's
credible.
innocent and shit. Like,
I mean,
he's not
doth
the fucking
thou
victim.
doth thou
Not the
ignorance
fucking
have
victim.
no bounds?
I don't fucking know. I don't. I feel like I'm Alex Jones right now. I get so pissed off about this stuff. I never get genuinely irritated unless it's some bullshit that's like
Hey,
online.
fucking frogs!
You're
I
not
don't like
fucking
them.
listening to me. The atrazine. The atrazine is turning the frogs gay. The fucking frogs.
Little did he know that. Little did he know that was revenge that the humans were placing against the frogs because the frogs have secretly been putting chemicals in the water that
To
turn
make
the
us
humans
gay.
gay the whole time.
Oh shit! Fucking subhuman societies at work.
Anyway, before we go too off tangent, I feel like I should bump us over to Caroline Farrow, who was
Freaking enough of this tomfoolery. Come on.
girl. Oh
And,
God, Josh just called us out, man.
Damn.
hey, I'm just saying,
Caught us
man. Here,
tomfoolery.
here I am doing my wholehearted crunches, and I hear about frogs and crap like that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna end set early, get people on task.
You know what? Gay frogs are important news.
Josh, shut up.
Yeah, and gay frogs also transmit the gay gene. Let's move on.
Shut the fuck up.
But this journalist was, I believe, taken away because she misgendered a trans person.
Oh, almost. She was almost taken away.
She's almost,
She was
which actually brings up, I think, the more important question about what even is the point of hate crimes.
no one fucking knows. I don't understand. Like, I guess
Like,
there are
hate
protected
crime is
classes
thought
of
crime, as
people.
far as I'm concerned.
What?
Well, you read 1984. You're familiar then with thought crime.
I don't fucking know anymore.
You know, thought crime where it was like if you think something that doesn't fall in line with what the establishment wants you to think, that's a crime, and they lock you up.
Thought crime?
Yeah,
Listen,
like
Oh yes,
I
thought
remember
crimes.
the fact.
Yep.
I remember the fact
hate
there
crime is an
is, and I
excuse
remember
to get
like
away with
certain things
locking
about
people
the
up for thought
story.
crime.
But like, I don't even. I don't fucking remember the ending.
Right. You see, hate crimes have a literal definition. The literal definition of hate crimes are criminal acts based on bias against race, sex, religion, etc. Criminal acts.
Yeah,
Well,
but the
yeah,
thing
but that's
is,
not how
though,
it gets used.
huh? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's literally what I was about to say. Like, okay, so in this case, there's this journalist. Fucking, I forgot her name, but I guess she tweeted about this male, this transgender girl, I guess, or whatever, and her mom was a trans woman, I guess, and I guess she used the biological term he to talk about the trans girl.
Mhm.
And the mom was like, "Oh shit, this is a hate crime. He's calling my daughter a dude."
I mean,
And I can't
everything's
agree
a
with that.
fucking hate crime nowadays.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not fucking.
Like, this goes back all. I mean, we can bring up what happened with Jordan Peterson here.
Exactly. Like, listen, if you want to ask me, to call you something, okay, and I call you something like on an individual basis, even Ben Shapiro, that the nigga who fucking made that whole meme of like melting snowflakes and shit, like he is like, okay, whatever's deemed like socially acceptable, aka if we're having a conversation, okay, or if somebody asks me about you that's like in public, and it's like a waitress or something. He talked about this to Blair White.
Oh yeah, I remember
And
this.
he was like, if I need to describe you, I'm gonna call you a girl, like in so many words. And Jordan Peterson was just like, whatever I deemed, socially acceptable or what, da 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 da. Like, a lot of people can't even leave it there. Like, somebody a while back asked Jordan, like, what what gives you, the extra expertise of knowing how to properly deem, when it's contextually correct to use somebody's pronouns. And he's like, listen, it's not about me appealing to some higher power. It's not about me like having some kind of like upper, echelon type knowledge on the topic and being able to deem like the correct choice. It's like it's my choice. It's my choice how I talk. I'm not about to have some fucking legislation make me say something that I'm not gonna say if I don't agree with the ideology that's backing that specific, you know, drive to change language that hasn't changed in fucking however many years. Like
Yeah,
he wasn't cussing and he wasn't being all like, goofy and shit. Obviously, I'm me, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but it's so many words that's what he said. And it's like, dude, as a journalist, it's not the fucking same as having a conversation or telling a waitress or a waiter. If you want to get all gender butthurt about it,
we need a
that
gender neutral term for waiter.
wait.
Wait,
Excuse me, wait.
excuse me,
Excuse me,
wait,
wait. I need you
wait,
to I need you to take my order right now. Fucking
wait.
now.
My steak is too cooked. It is too well done. I would like you to
You
have.
talk with the accent. That shit's weird.
I
What
don't
is
know.
that?
I'm trying to be like posh.
You
Posh.
see,
What does that
You can
even
tell
mean?
I have no
Is
idea
that a
what real
word?
people sound like.
Posh sounds like kosher, but with less letters.
Cocaine.
I eat posh.
Um,
Sorry,
but
I can't.
I
I
mean,
can't have that
I think
sausage. I eat posh.
even from like a legal standpoint, this has actually always been like one of my biggest concerns with the legal system is they have the weirdest, most arbitrary thing. Like attempted murder gets you a vastly lower sentence than actually succeeding in the murder, and I think that this actually ties very well into um, hate crime, right? Because if I fail to murder you, or if I go to murder someone, is it really better if I fail than if
Exactly, because then you could just fucking try to get it with somebody else.
and then from another if you want to take that again from a legal standpoint with hate crime is added to your sentence. If I rob someone because they're black and I don't like black people, is that is that really worse than if I just go out and rob someone because I didn't fucking like them or because I wanted to steal shit?
Yeah, like, dude, if if I'm talking to somebody, if I can have a reasonable conversation with them, I really don't give a fuck what they think about my skin color, and I don't give a fuck if they turn around and start being a dick, to my face after the conversation,
But hate crime
because
laws, even
it,
in
it doesn't
America,
matter if they're racist or some shit. Like they're either way, there's gonna be people out there who are gonna fucking hate my guts, and it's
and
not
from a
it's not my responsibility to choose what kind of hate is coming out of them, because either way that's just going to be on them. They're going to have to deal with the burden of being such a fucking hateful sad person, and it doesn't fucking matter.
yeah, and then even from like a legislative point, America has so many laws on the books that they don't legislate. It's ridiculous. But not only that, excessive legislation means that there is laws that can be abused, and hate crime laws are laws that can easily be abused.
And they
Because
have
I don't
been.
actually have to prove if I want to get someone, if I want to charge someone with hate crime from a legal standpoint, I do not have to prove to a jury that their actions caused me harm. I do not have to prove to a jury that their actions did anything negative to my life at all. I do not have to prove there was any negative impact on my life. All I have to prove,
It's that
very loosely, you don't even have, because it's not even something you can conclusively prove, is that their actions were driven by hatred for you,
yeah,
which is
because
the
those laws
loosest
are dictated
definition
by a
ever.
lot of open interpretation, and then on
Well,
top
yeah,
of that,
it's
there's
open to
also the fact.
interpretation because it means that if I, let's say I am a crippled black woman who is Muslim
And trans.
and trans. I'm a crippled black trans Muslim woman, and
Oof.
someone gets my coffee order wrong at Starbucks. I asked for my venti latte with double cream, and they gave me triple cream. Or I asked for triple cream, and they only gave me double cream. If I can justify to a jury that the barista's actions were driven by hatred towards me because I'm black, because I dug up some post that's vaguely, anti whatever you want to put out there. Maybe they made a post making fun of wheelchair bound people and I am in a wheelchair. I can then prove to a jury that they don't, that they, I can use that as evidence that they hate disabled people, which then means that I can get them prosecuted for a hate crime. Now, it's almost never used like that in America, but you could do that, and that's a problem. If you don't see that that's a problem, I don't know how to help you.
Well, the thing is, like, it's the same thing as like, having these young vulnerable women or whatever go on the stand and say that they got raped to boards that don't abide by specific actual laws that are on the books, and instead it's kind of like a he said she said type of thing. Then fucking you get cases like where uh black dudes who fit the description, who are on the football team, who are at a party, da 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 da, and instead of doing what she wanted, she fucking digs around, puts some seeds in people's heads, and fucks his life up for forever, indefinitely. He is now changed. On top of him, as an independent unit, having to do with factors like PTSD and shit, his life actually, like his general functionality, is completely changed. His whole system was shifted, and like
And the same thing happens with hate crimes. The same thing
yeah,
happens
exactly.
because if someone were to go out and take some joke I've made and present that in front of a jury as reasons that something I did was hateful, I could get charged with a hate crime, right? And that may
Yeah.
not seem that bad because it's like, oh yeah, they lied and I'll serve some amount of time, but then I'll get out and things will be fine. No, it won't
Nope.
because I will have a record, and people with a record are less likely to get jobs. They're less likely to be considered for benefits. They are less likely to receive charity. They are less likely
They're
to
more likely to be stigmatized. How about
they're
that?
more likely to be stigmatized, which means they're more likely to fall into gangs, which means theoretically someone, this theoretical person takes some joke I've said because I make a lot of out of line jokes.
Yeah.
Someone takes one of those jokes that I say and uses that as justification that I've committed a hate crime against them. Well, I go away. I now have a record. That makes me drastically more likely to get involved in actual crime and ruins the actual life of an innocent person.
Yeah, real powerful stuff. See, it seems like we see this from like different aspects. I feel like different aspects that lead to a similar point. Like Fred is sorry, yeah, like so Trigger Weasel is man, sorry, but yeah. So Trigger
Tell me
Weasel
you did that
is
to me. I don't fucking care.
right, yeah, okay. So Trigger is concerned about like this more the law of it, right? The material, the physical, this idea
Your
of
mic is
what is
hella
set in
muffled.
stone. Right. My voice sounds muffled. Oh, I know what that is. Give me a second. Just 1 second.
I
Actually,
just
yeah.
assumed that my headphones
That
were all fucked up.
right? That
Nah.
probably sounds way better, huh?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay, so yeah, I was just trying something for a moment. So the way I see it, yeah, like Trigger, you're coming at it from a sense of the law itself, and like the definition and what can happen from a material standpoint.
Yeah.
Outcome, when it comes to these sort of topics, you seem to like to look at the interconnectedness of things, like how one will relate to the other, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's always where my brain's going. I can't just like stay on one specific topic.
Right. I like to see it from the angle of an underlying philosophy. I like to see it from a metaphysical standpoint. And what I gather from this here is society's society's infatuations with labels. And I believe this was either chapter 2 or chapter 3 of the Fireplace right here. And yes, I just arbitrarily called them chapters, but that sounds
Boy,
good, don't you
just
think?
talk.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
You
So
ain't Avatar: The Last fucking Airbender.
right. Oh man, you got a point there. So yeah, like chapter 2 or 3, we mentioned how society like I brought up addiction, right? And how we like to put labels on things without completely understanding what they mean per se. This applies here. We like to put we like to put the idea of hate crime. However, hate crime is a misnomer now. And what hate crime isn't what is processed at the court. And as another underlying factor that, again related to the addiction idea, we put subjectivity in objective facilities. First, it was science way back when. We were talking about science and how science has to rely on objectivity and scientific method. Now we're going to the courts and the law, and we're taking the idea of the hate crime, and you can make an accusation of hate crime, but this uh, you can't bring forth evidence that is completely scientific in nature or objective on something that is inherently subjective, because
Exactly.
it comes down to opinions and he said she said. That's what it comes down to. And so I would actually argue that hate crime as a court ruling is inherently invalid. Crime in
Really?
general,
Well,
yes.
actually, I agree with that.
Well, it should be invalid. The thing is, it's not. Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Back
Well,
to
I mean,
back
The
to
thing is
Cali.
that people are trying to legislate on an objective basis, as you said, something that is inherently subjective.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree actually.
Yeah, and so that's the angle that I'm coming at it from, was the idea that there's a faulting in the philosophy behind these elements here. They come on two entirely different planes of, reasoning, more or less. And again, and so to Sampersand back around to the labeling, we label hate crime on something. Oh, they gave prejudice, discrimination. It's bigotry. They're xenophobic, right?
Yeah,
We throw in these terms. However, society treats terminology as not only hearsay, but almost as toys to, use as you please. We hear something, and like, say for instance, you got a new shiny robot, right? You want to play with it if you're a
a
kid.
robot.
Yeah, new shiny robot. You're an 8-year-old, and you see a shiny robot. You want to play
I
with
thought
it.
you said the new shiny rope, and I'm like, damn, this is taking a dark turn.
What the fuck?
Nope,
I was so
nope.
confused.
Fucking shiny
Uh,
rope that I'm gonna hang myself with.
No, no.
that is a negative. So yeah, this shiny robot here, right? You want to play with it. However, because we're so concerned with simply using it, we fail to recognize that this robot actually has cool little functions. It can actually, extend its wings. It can, make little noise effects and whatnot. We don't delve into its into it like what it's supposed to be used as. Rather, we're so eager and we jump the gun and we just go around throwing these labels. How if you were to actually just let's just use Starbucks again, right? Go up to someone in a Starbucks and you're just to randomly ask, "Hey, so what is the objective definition of racism?" As you guys may actually be surprised by, racism is actually a five-pronged definition. And I'm not going to go over it all right now, unless of course you guys want me to, but I think that
I
would
would
take too
love
long.
you to.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, okay, so racism is a five prong, and I've actually remembered this. So, first prong is that racism is the systematic subjugation by a group over another in order to gain an advantage. And the second prong is that it is an ideology that the differences in racial groups can be used to assert superiority. Again, remember groups. And then the third prong is that it is a rationality, a rationalization for political, economic, and social discrimination. The fourth prong is that it is justified, the idea of racism, by suggesting that those who are subjected are inferior and thus are deserving of unequal treatment. And the fifth prong is that all isms, and racism, of course, stem from this, are about the acquisition and maintenance of power. Now, saying something is, oh, that's racist, right? It's so far from the truth. Racism is so much larger and more explicit than any singular notion or what offhand comment a person makes. At best, at best, it could only be seen as stereotyping or perhaps prejudice, which is just stereotypes or notions not based in fact. That's all prejudice is.
That's interesting because if that's true, I don't think I've ever heard racism used in a proper context. Actually, no, I can think of a few times.
In a proper
Precisely.
context, what do you mean?
Because if that's true, then most of the time when people use racism, they're talking about people stereotyping.
Well, yeah, but
Right.
stereotyping is different than racism.
So much
Exactly.
different. So much different. And people have lost sight of that. It is in a sense a dead metaphor. And so we do not quite understand what are we even saying. Our accusations are coming from a flawed root, so to speak. We don't know what we're saying, to be blunt. We just don't. And so because of that, how can we even go so far as to have the audacity to accuse something of a particular topic when we are not using it correctly? The foundation of most of these accusations are are skewed. So again, that is the metaphysical idea of this. We have not, solidified our roots. So the law shouldn't have hate crimes. Hate crimes, we don't even use the word hate crime correctly, much less it being a subjective in nature term. We don't even, understand the difference between prejudice and discrimination per se. Which, by the way, discrimination by definition is just it just restricts, a group or person access to resources. That's in discrimination in particular. We don't understand these terms, and yet we're so not just arrogantly, but needlessly and carelessly throwing around these terms, and we're just hurting each other off as just some offhand comment in reaction to an offhand comment. And I'm just starting to spout things now, so I'm just gonna halt it here. You guys get my
I mean,
point.
you're completely and totally right. People have lost sight. I think that's kind of the nature of modern society is that we live in such a cushy world where nobody who's I'm not going to say nobody who's alive today because there are people alive today who experienced Jim Crow, but like no young people today actually know what it's like to live in a world where people are suffering, at least in the first world. People who have visited and lived among third world and second world people may know what it's like. But people from America who are young have no idea what it's like to be oppressed. And as such, they think that terms that should be as heavy hitting as racism can just be applied to fucking anybody with an idea they don't like. And
Mm.
that's they think that that qualifies as oppression, and I think it's because we live in such a cushy society where people are genuinely not completely equal, because obviously there are people with more money, there are people with less money, but people for the most part in the eyes of the law are completely equal. And I think that that escapes a lot of young people.
I mean, in general, a lot of young people don't have a lot of depth with what they try to do, mentally, just on their own when they think about things, and when it comes to interacting with people, a lot of people, whether they are young or just people who haven't had a lot of deep, internal dialogue on any of these, topics, those types of people will jump the gun and immediately assume that the most hateful thing, the most negative thing, is the inspiration at play, just because that's modern culture. So
You know
it's
what though?
a
I,
lot.
I I think this is an important thing, and this is going to be very bold of me to say to my to our one viewer. You, you one guy or girl, I don't know. I haven't checked the analytics. You, you know what you should do? You should, and I think this is important to anyone who wants to actually try to get engaged in politics. Spend a couple days in silence just contemplating why you believe what you believe. It's really healthy. And I think a lot of people in the modern world think it's weird to just sit and think for hours on end. Nothing but sitting and thinking on a single topic. A lot of people will sit and think about many topics, sit and think about one thing, why you believe what you believe. I know
Yeah.
that Josh and I have done it, and I'm sure Alchem has done it. And I'm sure all of us can tell you how big of an impact it has, because when you actually sit down and do that, you begin to see inconsistencies in your logic and you begin to connect dots.
I mean, it's not just something that individuals can like tell each other about too. It's like it's a thing. Like even recently, I've been trying to get back into my faith and everything, and I've been not experimenting, but delving back into really dedicating myself to like weekly going to a church, trying to actually be in the moment, being in that present time of actually you know if there's Bible study, discussing the topics at hand intellectually, and having that sense of connection to a higher power, and even people there. When I start after I started doing it, thinking about the way I think, uh, the topic of metacognition even came up from one of those people who was doing a workshop who, came from the church, and I was like, this can't just be a coincidence. Like it's a thing, It's like it's a big part of really coming into yourself and becoming who you are, and being centered around who you are. Because if you aren't actually centered around yourself, and really structuring yourself out, at least subconsciously, in a way that actually gives you a consistent line of logic, then things are gonna start to, you know, come out of place, as time goes on. Just because, you're gonna have to interact with people, you're gonna have to think about things, you're gonna have to do things as you live your life. And metacognition is really, it's a valuable thing to do. Even if it's like a once off thing, or you know you only do it every once in a while, like just do it.
Right. Yeah, I would actually agree with both. Yeah, I agree with both of you. Like, my version of this sentiment is just as we argued that society's foundation is weak, this is a product of many people having their foundations weak. Just as a social interaction is like a symbolic interaction switches S to U, society is just a product of all the individual interactions that we people make, just both between ourselves and with our social institutions. And to understand one's own self is to therefore understand the world around them, because we are all, in the end, people, and we come to understand these things. And as for me personally, I'm not going to claim I know all. Hell, I don't know a lot, to be honest. I just like to delve into some things. However, what I would say, and I would submit to you, the audience, of allegedly one person thus far. I take pride in that person. Don't get me wrong. Whoever he or she or it may be, we can't really decide. Um,
I identify as a Walmart toaster, cheap and
A
ineffective.
Walmart toaster, bitch. If you don't, what the? Yeah, I thought at least you'd go with like attack helicopter again or something.
that's
Oh,
hot.
oh my god.
Now,
Walmart toaster. Oh, no.
now, now, as I was saying, I would submit to you, the viewer, that the
Oh
decisions that we make are oftentimes not personal decisions, but societal decisions. And in order to be sure of what you believe in, you have to first be sure of yourself in general. You have to come to understand yourself. And interestingly enough, like for me most recently, this actually has been taking more of a physical allegory where I've been trying to understand my body, but is you guys know there's all sorts of, and I know this is a tangential topic. Let me go into this real quick. There's all sorts of like, oh, the dieting solution, the perfect workout solution, so on and so forth, right? People will bring out these answers. However, these answers are more or less personalized to themselves. They aren't for everybody. You have to figure out what's for you. And I mean to segue back into a ideological standpoint. And just as I'm trying to figure out what's right for me, and as you know, presumably Alchem and Trigger and many, many, many others have.
Yeah,
And I,
we're all just on a journey to try and, again, like center ourselves and figure out what's good for us, in general. So
right.
I can appreciate that.
So, are there any other topics for the night? I mean, again,
No, there's
yeah,
no
I
other
mean,
topics, which
yeah,
is
I
why I'm.
apologize, Trigger. I know you try to be organized about this, but every time I bring up something metaphysical, it seems like we get into all these symbolic topics and debates.
I kind of love it when you start bringing up metaphysics because I fucking love metaphysics.
Same here, G.
Oh, thank you,
I
guys.
swear, one day the three of us are gonna just sit down and realize, fuck, we need to write a book about philosophy, man.
You're
Ooh.
saying that so it'll happen, but honestly, philosophy. I don't
Josh
know,
and I will sit
fam.
down and be like, yo, man, we need to write a book about
I'm
philosophy.
fucking dead.
And we'll let Alchem write a chapter about metaphysics.
Goodbye.
Metacognition. There we go. Meta.
This is too
All
much.
right. Well, I'm not sure how we got to where we ended up, but this has been the Fireplace and our take on this week's events, which mostly included today's Mueller report.
Oh, I actually did want to bring up one minor thing at the end. Guess what? I actually did happen upon a secondary topic. But wait,
Big
actually,
McOof.
yeah, yeah,
Let's dive into this
right.
dick first.
University of Georgia. Get this. Four kids got expelled because they apparently were having this. Lo and behold, this this racial video that went viral. But and of course this seems to be coming up more and more. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up amongst all others is because the UGA, which is the Student Government Association for them, actually ended up suspending an entire fraternity when only four specific individuals were involved. And this was just an incredible acting. Now, just as a little bit of background, the four individuals here, who were of course a part of University of Georgia, they were part of a fraternity, right? And they
Ooh,
posted,
frat
you know,
boys.
right, yeah, frat boys. So, poor decision making abound. And not to objectify, but really, that's what it is. So they they actually had on Friday night for these members do this video. And this video would have these guys, whip other dudes with a belt as a whip and saying incredibly offensive things like pick my cotton and n-word and so on and so forth. And so
Now,
they
just
were
verifying, did they say the N word or did they literally say N
N
word?
word.
they said the n-word. I'm just
Uh,
not I just say n-word because
Because he
it's
doesn't have any balls.
you know
I
what, for better
appreciate
or for
you.
worse, like even if I didn't, you know what, I don't care. It's my, like, I have everyone's permission in the world.
Okay. I appreciate you. you.
Oh,
You don't
Because
gotta
he's a
prove
dirty Jew
yourself.
lover.
You don't have to prove yourself, man. You know what? Even if I said it, it would have been fine because boy.
oh no, I was going to go into something profound, Malcolm, but you know what? You're right. I'm actually going in a bit of a tangent here. Let's
No,
maybe
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
yeah,
You can
okay.
say what you want to say if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like feeling I'm getting
I'm
assaulted. I
just,
mean, come on.
I'm just joshing you.
Ah,
Ah,
ah, ah, ah, ah, ah. But
shit,
yes,
I got
so the
excited.
fraternity, so obviously these four kids got axed. They got completely expelled because, I mean, come on. That is admittedly more explicit than a lot of what we see nowadays. that, that is pretty bad. But, okay, serious face. But what I actually take issue with is the following, which is that the student government took out the entire fraternity. They didn't actually take them out, ad infinitum. They just took them out for maybe like next semester or two. They just suspended it. And my issue with that is the culprits were obvious and them getting pegged. Yes, look, I can understand them getting pegged. As it was stupid and they and let's be honest, they were probably drunk and just making even poorer decisions than usual. But I can understand why they got pegged. Why
Sounds
everyone
like a
else got
great
pegged
decision to
though?
me.
Yeah. What got pegged? Everyone else getting hit for it though. That is an issue. And I feel that while this idea of if you're not with and you're against has taken an evolutionary stance where if you're even remotely with not you don't even have to be with in the spirit of that. They weren't a part of the video. They were just a part of the same freaking building, and they got taken down. And everything's starting to become everything's starting to become labeled and putting under schisms. You're part of that fraternity. Oh man, that fraternity is bad because such and such is bad. One bad
Yeah,
apple doesn't make the fruit basket bad, people. And I just
I
thought
mean,
I'd
I think that that's kind of the big thing that a lot of liberals lose sight of because a lot of them want to talk so much, especially to me, about how, like, oh, not all Muslims, oh, not all, whatever. But, like, as soon as one person from a fraternity does something, or as soon as one person who's white does something, suddenly all white people are responsible. And it even ties back to like the idea of fucking reparations. There's a bunch of Democratic candidates campaigning on reparations, which, for those of you who don't know, is the idea that because people who had the same skin color as me own slaves, I should be paying money to black people to repay what their ancestors or what people who looked like them went through. And to put this into context, for me, I would be forced be under some of these many of these candidates actually under their proposals I would be forced to pay reparations. Right, I have two halves of my family. One half of my family was Scottish who came to America around the time of the Civil War, and many of the people who immigrated from Scotland died in the Civil War fighting for the North. They were all
Damn.
poor. The other half
I
of
did
my
not know that.
the other half of my family is Jewish, right? And I don't mean Jewish as in like, yeah, there's some Jewish ancestry back there. My great
Jewish.
grandpa, my great grandparents fled Nazi Germany and came here.
Shit, dude.
These candidates are proposing shit like that I pay reparations, despite the fact that my family history had nothing to do with American slavery. And I think that's the line of thinking that is it's not what I just said is not the cause of all these people suffering from this college and from this fraternity, but I think that they're symptoms of the same sociological disease.
I get you. And to sum it up for what it is, I would say, guys, understand your climate. For our dear Georgia quartet, guys, do you really think such a video would have been taken very kindly to in this day and age?
I
Understand your
mean, I'm
pe-
probably gonna watch it because it sounds fucking hilarious, but
well, hey, well, do as you will, right? Conservatives, understand your climate when it comes to the liberals here, right? They for whether or not they may be objectively right or wrong about some things, and I'm not going to, partake in my particular leaning here. You have to respect them, right? Don't be so like blatantly disrespectful. I mean, come on, you can be better than that, guys. And then you have the other side with what Frederick was mentioning. understand your climate. In this case, from a chronological factor, it's been 400 years. Come on.
I mean,
Like,
technically, it's been 150 years since we abolished slavery, and about 60 years since we ended the practice of segregation.
right, like 400
But
years,
still,
and then we get this stuff. Oh, right, yeah. Thank you for correcting me on that. I actually
and
made
actually,
I misspoke there.
if you want a historical, if you want some historical facts, I always find it so stupid, and I know that we should be stopping like any minute, but this like really makes me think of the fact that like every society has had slaves, right? That is like an objective. Every society in history has had some form of slavery. Even the Native American tribes practiced slavery. But Western society, which gets all the most flack, right? Western society gets the most flack for slavery, despite the fact that we were the first to end it, right? The British were among the first to end it, and we came a little bit after that. And yet, there are certain cultures that are held up on pillars by the left, like the Middle East and Muslim cultures, that still, to this day, practice slavery.
Right. Yeah. So, like you said, we gotta like start ending it here. So, as per the usual, I want to just leave a big message here. Uh, the message of tonight is, be it with the Mueller report and leaning towards one way or another, or just the neutral, or all the way up to these Georgia frat boys who got suspended because they simply didn't act correctly, for better or for worse. Understand your climate. Understand what it is that that you're bringing your words into. Understand what you're bringing your actions into. There are certain ways to go about things. Even if you may be correct about something, if you approach in the incorrect manner, it soils it all. Yes, SpongeBob said it. Soiled it. Soiled it. Soiled.
Boy. Oh my god.
All right, and on that note, we're closing off for the night. This has been the Fireplace.
I'm
Dear
scared. I'm scared.
God.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared.